social media.
Yep.
Good morning. Thank you so much for tuning into K24 this morning. Karibu sana to another fantastic show lined up for you all the way till 9 a.m. My name is Shiko Kaitani.
And my name is Mungala Mbuvi. So does it mean that it changes after 9 a.m.? So you said all the way till 9 a.m. My name is Shiko Kaitani. So after 9 you're who?
I
Shiko Oka Etani.
Right.
All right. All right. Good morning to you. Karibu tena sana to the show. Yeah. Jeff, Mambo.
I don't know what you guys were drinking on that particular side, but I'll let you guys finish your first drink of the day as you decide if it's Shiko Kaitani or Shiko Kaitani.
Do you want me to be like Mina? I need a drink. It's like 6 in the morning.
Welcome to the show, of course. My name is Jeff Mote. Even on a Tuesday, we make sure we jump into the dailies and delve deep and find out what's going on as far as our morning news is concerned.
Yeah.
And it seems like all the front pages of our papers this morning talking about Mike Sonko, governor of Nairobi, the crisis that might be there in terms of leadership of the country, but also as far as its doorstep is concerned, personally, what portends for him even as he waits for his hearing tomorrow. We discussed that and plenty more. My panel almost fully constituted this morning. Dennis Tumbi back after a bit of a hiatus morning. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
Mark Bichachi as well. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well. And for the first time, Oliver Karori, welcome to the show. We'll also be joined by Joy Mdivo later as we look at some of the stories as far as our newspaper review is concerned. Sonko's world crumbles. That's what the PD is going with on the front page, and the harsh reality that might be setting in for the Nairobi governor. We discussed that and plenty more right here on our newspaper review.
When someone disappears, like the way Tumbi disappeared for that period, alikuwa ameenda either Rorasho ama honeymoon. So
wow.
You should explain.
Okay, I mean, it's a theory we'll have to debunk right here and find out what happened.
Okay, so of course after the newspaper review, we take a look at some of those trending stories on social media. What have you been talking about online? That's what we're on about from 7:30 to 8 a.m. So start talking to us on our social media platforms.
Then immediately after that, we shall talk about innovation that changes lives. Now I shall be joined by some very interesting people. I'm talking about Rosin Wanjiru, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Kesho Labs. And also we shall have Samuel Munguti, CEO and founder of Farmers Pride. All these individuals have innovated things that have literally rather changed communities and the societies at large, so do stand by for that conversation. Definitely coming on money and finance.
Okay, fantastic stuff. As always, we'd like to know how your Tuesday morning is panning out so far. You can tweet us at K24TV. Give us a big good morning. Let us know how, if you've already closed shop, closed the office, and are getting ready for the December holidays proper. Let us know as well at K24TV. You can also SMS us on 21222. As always, we start by looking at your roads, let you know how that situation is, and then straight after that, we get into our newspaper review. Good morning.
Like to monitor those major routes for you, and that's why we have our satellite feed right here on our traffic watch, just letting us know what the situation is on our roads this morning and every other morning. But of course, we always say we cannot do this alone. We definitely need your input as far as our traffic watch is concerned, and that means we want you to talk to us, tell us how things are looking on your end. So let me start off our traffic watch by just taking a look at two major routes before I hand over to Jeff. And we're going to start off with Mombasa Road, a major route that we cannot miss to take a look at on our traffic watch. And that's because you can expect, of course, a little bit of traffic at this particular time, even if it is, yes, a couple of minutes past 6 a.m. Mombasa Road always being notorious for, being busy at this particular time. And taking a look at that map here, we are around City Cabanas, and you do know this intersection, quite popular. And here you do have the Southfield Mall. This, of course, being a key area to look at because of the Imara Daima station and, of course, the turnoff. You can see that red line on your screen. Anytime you see that red line, it does indicate that traffic is already bumper to bumper. And you can imagine that little flyover that passes the Imara Daima station. And, of course, heading towards the CBD, you can expect a little bit of a snarl up. But it doesn't look so bad because, as you can see, it moves from red, it moves to orange, and it moves to green, indicating that it starts to open up. So yes, there is traffic, but nothing major to report. And here we are making our way past Bombil. I am at Panari and making my way right to where Parkside Airtel Towers is. And here we are making our way past Capital Center, and of course that's South Sea turnoff. And here we are. This little circle on your screen is the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. Let me just zoom in slightly so you can see what it looks like. You can actually see that red line indicating, of course, traffic is right here by the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. But of course, nothing major to report because you would expect traffic police to be there, or perhaps the lights are working at this time, but it does open up as you head towards the CBD. Okay, so taking a look at Langata Road, I'm going to ask my team at the back to see if we can actually switch the feed. And of course, there you've got Langata Road, and try and make our way all the way towards Galleria Mall and see how it's looking for you at this particular time. So even as we switch things, remember at K24 TV is how you can get in touch with us. We always do appreciate some of those tweet pics that come through. Go ahead at K24 TV yet again. We definitely will appreciate that. Okay, so we are going to continue to monitor those roads for you, not to worry. We'll be back with more information just in case there is an accident or an incident that you want to let us know. Yet again, get in touch with us, or even send us a text through 21222. Let me hand over to Jeff, who will be taking us through the newspaper review.
And welcome back. Now it's time for us to go through the big stories of the day and get into our newspaper review. My panel fully in place, but first let's look at the front pages of the dailies and then get to them and find out what this really means, even as you get ready for your day proper. Front page of the People Daily: Sonko's world crumbles, harsh reality. Nairobi governor remanded at industrial area prison until tomorrow after denying 19 counts of corruption and abuse of office. A quote from the magistrate, Douglas Ogoti: the court will have to consider submissions and the authorities. It will not be possible to do so today. So this, of course, will be heard tomorrow on Wednesday, meaning that he'll be remanded for another day right there. Front page of the Daily Nation: crisis at City Hall as Sonko era collapses. Without a deputy governor, Nairobi stares at two options: dissolution of assembly by the president and a by-election in 3 months, or a hurried appointment to take charge of affairs of the country's seat of power. At City Hall, Sonko's reign faces an uncertain future. Where do we move from here? The embattled governor will spend today and tomorrow at industrial area remand prison. Another story that we need to look at: Chinese firm blocks bid to review tilted SGR contract. We'd waited to see the details of that particular contract, but it seems that won't happen. The firm says that the contract is sensitive and private. We'll be talking about that in just a bit. Front page of the Standard: end of an era. What next for Nairobi? Populist Governor Mike Sonko faces a record 19 criminal charges without a successor in office. What are the possible scenarios for a city court in crippling leadership crisis if Sonko is barred from office tomorrow, as was the case with two other governors on graft charges? That's a big question that has been asked for quite a while, since we have actually been having a capital city and county, of course, without a deputy governor and even a substantive speaker who couldn't discharge duties. So the big question is how to move forward from this particular scenario. Front page of the Star: criminal past of Governor Sonko exposed in court. County boss faces fresh assault charges in Voi and Mombasa. Governor remains in custody pending bail application ruling tomorrow. That's on the front page of the Star. And then finally, front page of the Business Daily: slow job growth denies KRA 30 billion shillings in income tax. The Treasury had hoped to raise 110 billion shillings in first quarter of this year from payee and 110 billion from income tax, but taxman fell short of target. So an economy that still needs a bit of fixing right there. And we look at the big story of the day, of course, which is indeed Mike Sonko. So once again, even as we get into our newspaper review proper, once again, I'll introduce my panel. Dennis Tumbi, a political and governance expert. Good morning. Good morning. Mark Bichachi, political analyst. No stranger to the show. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well. Good morning, Oliver Karori, political analyst as well.
Good morning.
And if it's a Tuesday, of course, Joy Mdivo, executive director of East Africa Law Center for Justice and Law, is going to be here to take us through the big stories of the day. Good morning, Joy.
Hey there.
Let's look at actually the only story that on the front pages of each of the dailies this morning, and it's all about Sonko's world crumbling. I'll start with a person who's been pretty passionate as far as a Nairobi governor is concerned and has been using the term as prison prefect right here on the show, Mr. Mark Bichachi. You've spoken about this person severally on different fora publicly. Is this what was bound to come to us when we went to the ballot? It was just a matter of when?
It was just a matter of time. It was just a matter of time. The guy apparently had a pending date with prison, and you know the law may chug slow, but it chugs through. It finally caught up with him, so he's got to answer for those things. His antics for many years. He has been associated with very many unsavory statements. I'll not mention them here just in case I'm sued. But definitely the prison prefect is finally back home. I'm sure he's orienting himself with his surroundings. Right. But that's good news for this country. It's good news for this country because people like him and people who think like him and people who act like him finally have to rethink whether they can be leaders in this country. We need to remember that until Sonko came to the fore, certain people would never have thought of coming to run for office. And I call them children of Sonko. If you look at Bobo Wino and his antics, he's styled after Sonko. If you look at the guy who runs into Dusit well after the war is over with a gun bigger than the terrorists without any terrorists to handle. Those are guys that are styling themselves after Gideon Buvi Sonko. So it's a good thing that we're finally questioning what kind of leaders that we have, and it's a good thing that finally we're going to rest the issue of whether he's got a pending prison sentence or not, because it's something that we've discussed for a long time. Right. But even better, we are asking what is the value of this certificate of good conduct if a prison prefect can get it.
Oliver, I'll come to you because some people are saying it wasn't really a secret what we are learning now about his criminal past. He has spoken about it, self-confessed in different fora, on TV, in rallies, what he had to do at Shimo Latewa, how he was leading different inmates there. And still we voted for him, and here we are now. Some people are asking, what took us so long to get to this?
Jeff, thank you. I think if we narrow the whole problem to Sonko, we lose the bigger picture. We might have some content in the frame, but we might not have a real view of what is happening. What is happening with Mike Sonko is what we should ask ourselves. Are we staring at a collapse of our institutions? When we talk about Sonko, Sonko is a product of a process. That process is called an election. An election in itself, we are told it is a process. What contains an election? You must have certain documentation. Right. How did Sonko get this document? That is where we ought to begin the discussion. The next question should be, how many Sonko types do we have within our leadership infrastructure that they still exist just because they are not shouting, or they are not loud, or their opulence has not gotten the attention of the public. So the question is, how did the DCI issue him with a clearance, with a certificate of good conduct? 2, how was Sonko cleared by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission? Because for you to run, you must have the EACC documentation. 3, how did he get his clearance with the KRA? Because if we are poking holes to his financial lifestyle, we need to know that there are documentation that are supposed to support this. And the 4th question will be, is wealth declaration form? What entails the wealth declaration form? Because when we look at all that, we ask ourselves, do we have the correct leadership, or we also have a deficit of leadership, as we have always have a deficit of everything in this country? The other point I would like to run away from is the point that when we try to make sure that we remain at Sonko, we make Sonko bigger than the problem. The problem here is a governance problem. We need to ask ourselves, how are we going to write this problem? And the danger also is that the BBI has not talked about how to write some of our problems. Because when you go to Nigeria, for example, before somebody is declared as a presidential candidate, they must face a panel where all these things are brought about. And I remember at times, I had a favorite politician from that side of the world, Ibrahim Babangida. Ibrahim Babangida could not make it past the panel. And that is how good the law there is.
Right.
They have their similar problem of corruption, inept governance issues, but they have developed ways of solving it. But for us, we tiptoe around the problem.
Right. And even as you talk about the issue in terms of the documentation that was needed for him to vie as a candidate, Dennis, I'll come to you because even when you go back to the nomination process as far as Jubilee was concerned, initially he wasn't the front runner for this particular seat.
Absolutely.
And there was a lot of jostling in the party, and they finally capitulated and gave it to him.
Absolutely.
It seemed like he strong down the party.
Yes.
What led to this? Because it seems like even from that point up until his arrest, he was almost untouchable. He could do what he wanted in the county, move how he wants, and was answerable to no one.
Jeff, this for me is a very, very critical time and absolute important lessons for us. And I agree with my brother here. Because this for me is a critical study of constitutionalism and constitutional failure. Is we have to look at it not from a Sonko perspective, but from a constitutional perspective. And in fact, having vied for the senatorship in Nairobi, I studied something called Sonkonization of politics. Is a system that operates outside the system and then qualifies itself as the system. And the sin of Sonko is actually not corruption according to the system. The sin of Sonko is as a failure, not a failure, is actually a sin that he's trying to be bigger than his bosses in the cartel. And that's the truth of the matter. It's not the fact that Sonko is the most corrupt governor of politicians that there is. We know that the system is full of corrupt ones. But his sin, he's not complying with his fellow cartel bosses. And therefore, that necessitates his ouster and many other things that we can speak about. But for me, looking at it from the failure of constitutionalism in this country, is that having been an election, you realize that an election is just a mere stamp to pretend that there's democracy in Kenya. Well, really, Kenya is a country that's run by thugs and complies on what it is that they call thugocracy. So if you look at it, this is such an important question for us. And we need to ask ourselves, is there democracy in Kenya? Is there constitutionalism in this country? Are there institutions in this country? Because if you look at it, look at the critical pixelated picture of something that we call a Senate. That then they've become defenders of what we are looking at evil at the end of the day. And if you look at it, even when you come to party nominations, the fact that Sonko was not even a favorite of the system, but he overthrew them in their own system. A small flow of changing from party cards, and you remember Jubilee was selling them at 20 shillings, and then he jumped into the IDs and the ferrying of voters and whatever it is, and he subjugated the system thereabout. So you tend to realize that that's the reason why leaders in this country do not respect constitutions. They will throw a constitution that's 10 years old out of the window and bring something that favors them. This is a clear failure that a person who is seen as a criminal was actually authenticated by the same system and given a certificate of good conduct. And not just that, cleared by the IBC. And not just that, voted overwhelmingly by who at the end of the day. So once we look at it from a critical lens and ask ourselves, really, is this country under arrest by some type of system that is not the COK 2010? Then we'll be able to navigate from there and find out that Sonko is just a mere case study in an extremely big picture that is pixelated and flawed. And as Kenyans, we need to be extremely careful to understand that we discuss about the law, we discuss about the institution, but none of these guys operate in them. Then how did Sonko find his way into Nairobi governorship? If really this is a man who ran from prison. So these are very, very critical questions that we need to look at.
And Joe, even let me come to you on this, because essentially the reason why we have different institutions is to check power, have the check and balance system right there, so that regardless of who you are as a person, once you get into a certain office, regardless of what you want to do there, there's a check that will come into play. We look at Nairobi County, for instance, and we didn't have the balance to Sonko's excesses. He said for quite a while without a deputy governor. In fact, up until this point, some people were convinced he'd do the rest of his term without a deputy governor. No one could force him to appoint one. We look at the assembly. Seems like the county assembly couldn't check him as well. So where were we going wrong in that particular point of view? And now that we've seen the gaps, how do we remedy it moving forward?
I think first and foremost we need to admit that what we are seeing with Sonko is the rise and rise of corruption. It's the snowball effect of corruption. Think about it. When he was a convict at Shimolatewa and managed to persuade somebody at Coast General Hospital, no, managed to persuade somebody that he needs to go to Coast General for treatment, managed to convince somebody to let him get out of Coast General because he had matters urgent to take care of at home, then managed to convince somebody to let him start a business. And then he came to Nairobi and started a business, and he was this big flash guy. We didn't even know where he came from, because I used to live in Buruburu. And all of a sudden, there are all these pararira, matatus, and you're wondering, also, who's the new kid on the block? And, you know, it just sort of, he's demonstrated throughout his career how with money and enough manipulation, you can basically have your way. When he stood for Makadara MP first time, that's when his past ought to have caught up with him. But with enough persuasion. Like, I'm informed, I cannot be cross-examined on this, but I am informed that even if you try to look for the police file, the OB records, the court files, the prison records of Gideon Movie Sonko, you cannot find them. So all we have is his word for it. Because the manual records, because those days everything was on paper and pen, were abracadabra and they magically disappeared. And now we've gotten to a place where somebody imagined that this was modus operandi that could be perpetuated for eternity, for as long as he needed to do it. And he got to a place where his hubris got the better of him, where he thought he was completely untouchable. Now he has been touched. But now that he has been touched, the thing now is what we're doing. We're looking back and wondering, how did he get here? Somebody sang a famous song and asked, how did you get here? Nobody's supposed to be here. Definitely not Mike Sonko. But he is here. That tells us then what we have put down as our interpretation of chapter 6 in the leadership and integrity guidelines of having HELB clearance, DCI clearance. I mean, I saw WhatsApp copies of his certificate of good conduct. Previous records, nil. Everybody knows that's a lie. Somebody's lying on the job at DCI. Who issued it? Whose signature is on it? I want to see now, fine, we have Sonko here, but let's also have a backtrack. Who are these who got induced to sanitize the insanity, the unsanitary? Who are these who are perpetrating? Because this snowball started with the little thing. It started with a guy escaping from prison or a guy evading. And now we are stuck with the capital city of this country in the clutches of somebody who has completely broken down the system, torn up the rule book, thrown it out the window. Nairobi is now in actually legal limbo because the Constitution only envisages Senator Lachi acting if Sonko is actually removed from office. But since technically he is still in office, we have no substantive deputy, we have no CEC for legal. In fact, half the CECs are not there, and the ones who are there are all on tenterhooks. We have a system now that's actually been ground to a halt. So he's in custody right now, but he also has us in a place between the devil and the dark blue sea.
Was that the design? To make sure all of these offices were vacant so that if he leaves, the city can't run without him. And
when he was taken to the Senate, you could see that that was the game plan. Show me where it tells me that I must appoint a deputy. You can't show me, then I'm not going to appoint a deputy. He gets out of there and fires people he thought had given opinions as to why. So this is somebody who thought he could manipulate the system forever. In my opinion, it is a very opportune moment for us to even re-examine what it is that constitutes. If I turn up with my good conduct and my KRA and my what, does that mean I'm full of integrity? Can we stop looking at things so simplistically and in such a plain? I mean, Kenya government and papers, we're just obsessed. Have a master's, you come with this document and that document, and come with the originals, have them laminated, and we think that. Can we just have a conversation, ask ourselves the hard questions? Can we have somebody who's not even a degree holder, but because they have the requisite what we need? Because some of these things, some of these leadership positions, is not even the papers or the what, it's the unction to lead. That's what you need. Can we just redefine what is leadership and integrity in this country? Because, like Mark pointed out, there are other leaders who are coming up in this same format, and you look at them and you realize it's a tragedy Because what it is communicating to younger people is just get money wherever you'll get money, we don't care. But once you get it, come and we'll make you in charge of even more money.
Right, right. Mark, before we go to the break, very quickly.
The key issue that I'd like to correct my brother here, let me tell you, when Obado was arrested, why didn't he say there's a cartel of murderers and he's fallen out with that cartel? When Waititu was arrested, why wasn't it a cartel? Can people just bear their crosses without tying things into other things? Sonko has not been arrested because of Tanga and Kieleweke. He's not been arrested because of his tribe, and neither has he been arrested because he fell out with a cartel. He's been arrested because he's suspected of various crimes, some of which include assaulting a police officer, others include corruption, and others include the fact that he may or may not have run away from prison. And that then underscores what we really need to handle in this country. And Joy Mudivo has put it very, very well. Who is a leader in this country? Pray tell me, who is a leader? Is Waititu a leader of the same scale as Professor Kivuta Kibwana in Makueni? That's a question we must ask ourselves. And what is the role of political parties in sanitizing the electoral process? Because Jubilee and NAK Kenya are guilty of blessing us with Mike Sonko. And the question is, what responsibility do they bear? And as a party, what should Jubilee be doing now faced with such a circumstance?
Okay, very quickly, that we joined on that.
You know what, I'd like Mark Bichachi not to pretend that he doesn't live in Kenya. We live in a country that has no respect for the Constitution. Mike Mbuvi is not against the Constitution. It's not Mike Mbuvi versus the Constitution. It is one cartel against another, jostling for the power of Nairobi. By the way, Nairobi is the Jerusalem of politics, not just in terms of political power, but even in terms of economic power. It is one cartel jostling for the power of the city. And that one we know. Let's not pretend. By the way, if you look at the charges that are against Mike Mbuvi Sonko, you realize that they're an afterthought. If you see what Mike has been doing in Nairobi, it's because he knows something will come after him. And by the way, the same happened to Kidero. Nairobi cannot have the most powerful third person in the country, because at the end of the day, that person will come and get the system off. We know that. Every time you have a powerful politician in Nairobi, they'll try and get him off. And I'm not saying that the guys are clean. The guys are as dirty as it comes. But at the end of the day, this country, it is one big cartel after another one and after another one after another. Let's not pretend that this is a rule of law.
Okay, let's take a break on that particular point.
Like that.
We'll come back and pick it up from there as far as this cartel or within the structure of Nairobi governance is concerned. But also looking at the Senate in terms of being able to keep check the counties, because that's an essential role they'll be playing in terms of oversight. But it seems like it's massively lacking. We looked at the battery of lawyers representing Governor Sonko, and lots of questions were asked, even on that particular regard. We discussed that and more after the break. Of course, we want your views as well at K24 TV. You can also SMS us on 21222. Back shortly.